The underestimated species. The massive orbital station Omega-7 hung in space like a jeweled crown, its crystalline towers catching the light of 3 different suns. This was the heart of galactic civilization, where representatives from 57 different species gathered to make decisions that affected trillions of lives across the galaxy. Today's meeting would change everything, though none of the alien delegates suspected it yet. Commander Sarah Chen walked through the gleaming corridors toward the Grand Assembly Hall, her simple Earth uniform standing out among the exotic clothing and natural features of dozens of alien species. At 35, Sarah had spent the last 5 years representing humanity in these halls, and she had grown accustomed to being overlooked, dismissed, and generally treated like a child among adults. The humans were still considered newcomers to galactic society. Earth had only achieved faster-than-light travel 60 years ago, and in galactic terms, that made them practically infants. Most species measured their spacefaring history in thousands or tens of thousands of years. To them, humans were an interesting curiosity at best, and a minor annoyance at worst. Dr. Marcus Webb fell into step beside Sarah as they approached the assembly hall. Marcus was a brilliant scientist who had spent the last decade working on classified projects for Earth's government. His sandy hair was streaked with gray despite being only 42, a testament to the stress of his secret work. Few people knew exactly what Marcus did, but Sarah was one of them, and the knowledge weighed heavily on both of them. "Are you ready for this?" Marcus asked quietly, adjusting his glasses nervously. Sarah nodded, though her stomach churned with anxiety. "As ready as anyone can be for what's coming. The question is whether the galaxy is ready for what humanity has been preparing." They entered the vast assembly hall, where hundreds of delegates were taking their seats. The chamber was designed to accommodate the wildest variety of alien physiologies imaginable. Some delegates sat in traditional chairs, others required specialized environments with different atmospheric mixtures, and a few floated in zero-gravity fields. The air buzzed and hummed with the constant sound of translation devices, converting dozens of languages into something everyone could understand. The Vorthan Empire's delegation commanded attention from their prominent seats near the center of the hall. Ambassador Crixtall was an impressive figure even by alien standards, standing over 8 feet tall with green-scaled skin and eyes like molten gold. The Vorthans had controlled vast regions of space for over 20,000 years, and they acted like it. Their technology was advanced, their military was powerful, and their attitude toward younger species was condescending at best. General Thakmor of the Zephyrian Alliance occupied another prominent position. The Zephyrians were a proud warrior race with pale blue skin and elaborate crests of feathers that changed color based on their emotions. Right now, Thakmor's crest showed the deep purple that indicated impatience and annoyance. The Zephyrians had been expanding their territory aggressively for the past century, and they viewed human space as an obstacle to their plans. Sarah and Marcus took their seats in the small section reserved for Earth's delegation. The human section was located in what could charitably be called the minor species area, far from the center of attention. From here, they could observe the proceedings but would only be acknowledged if specifically called upon, which rarely happened. The session began with routine matters: trade disputes, territorial adjustments, and resource allocation agreements. Sarah had attended hundreds of these meetings, and the pattern was always the same. The major species made decisions, the mid-level species offered opinions that were politely ignored, and the minor species, like humanity, were expected to simply accept whatever was decided. Everything changed when Ambassador Crixtall rose to address the assembly. His massive form commanded immediate attention, and the hall fell silent except for the hum of translation devices. "Honored delegates," Crixtall began, his voice carrying the weight of millennia of authority. "Today we must address a growing concern that affects the continued expansion and prosperity of our great civilizations. The issue is one of inefficient resource allocation and territorial management." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. She had heard rumors about this topic, but had hoped they were just that, rumors. Crixtall activated a holographic display that showed a 3-dimensional map of local galactic space. Several star systems were highlighted in different colors, with human colonies marked in simple white dots. As you can see, the species known as humans have established colonies in 17 star systems across 3 different sectors. While we respect their right to expand, we must consider the greater good of galactic civilization. General Thakmor stood up, his feather crest now showing the bright red of excitement and aggression. The Vorthan ambassador raises an excellent point. These human colonies occupy strategic locations that could be far better utilized by more established civilizations. The Zephyrian Alliance requires expansion room for our growing population, and several of these human worlds would serve our needs perfectly. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. Representatives from a dozen different species nodded their heads or made whatever gestures indicated approval in their cultures. Sarah watched in growing horror as the casual dismissal of human rights unfolded before her eyes. The humans have shown admirable initiative in establishing these colonies, continued Krixtal with what passed for diplomacy among his people. But we must ask whether they have the resources and capabilities to properly develop these worlds. The Vorthan Empire could transform those planets into productive centers of commerce and industry within a few decades. Another delegate, a crystalline being from the Quantum Collective, added her voice to the discussion. Our analysis indicates that human technological development has plateaued at a relatively primitive level. Their ships still use basic fusion drives, their cities lack proper energy distribution networks, and their military capabilities are minimal. It would be more efficient to relocate their populations to fewer, more manageable worlds. Sarah felt, Marcus tense beside her. Few people in the galaxy knew just how wrong that assessment was, but Marcus was one of them. He had spent the last 10 years working on projects that would revolutionize everything these aliens thought they knew about human capabilities. The debate continued for over an hour, with various species offering their opinions on the human problem. Some suggested forced relocation, others proposed economic incentives to encourage voluntary evacuation, and a few even discussed simply taking the worlds by force if necessary. Throughout all of this, not a single delegate asked for human input or opinion. Finally, the presiding officer, an ancient being from the Cosmic Council, whose species was so old that nobody remembered their original name, called for formal proposals. The chair recognizes Ambassador Krixtal of the Vorthan Empire. Krixtal rose again, and Sarah knew that whatever came next would change the course of galactic history. The Vorthan Empire, in partnership with the Zephyrian Alliance and with the support of 12 other major civilizations, formally proposes the following resolution. The human species will be given 30 standard galactic days to evacuate their colonies in the systems of New Terra, Harmony, and Dawn's Light. These worlds will then be transferred to more capable species for proper development. In return, humanity will receive compensation in the form of technology transfers and preferred trading status. The hall erupted in discussion. Most delegates seemed to view this as a reasonable compromise. A few species objected on principle, but their voices were quickly overwhelmed by the majority. Sarah realized that the vote was essentially a formality. The decision had already been made in private meetings before today's session. The presiding officer called for order and then looked toward the human delegation. The chair recognizes Commander Sarah Chen representing the United Earth government. What is humanity's response to this proposal? Sarah stood slowly, feeling the weight of history on her shoulders. Every eye in the massive hall focused on her, and she could sense the mixture of condescension, impatience, and mild curiosity from the assembled delegates. They expected her to either beg for mercy or make empty threats that they could easily ignore. Instead, Sarah spoke in a calm, clear voice that carried to every corner of the hall. Honored delegates, I thank you for the opportunity to respond to this proposal. The United Earth government's position is simple and non-negotiable. We decline. A wave of surprised murmurs swept through the assembly. Krixtal's golden eyes narrowed with what might have been amusement. Commander Chen, I believe you may not fully understand the situation. This is not a request or a negotiation. This is a formal resolution of the Galactic Assembly, backed by the combined might of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. Sarah nodded politely. I understand perfectly, Ambassador, and I repeat, We decline. The human colonies you wish to claim are sovereign territories established through legitimate exploration and settlement. They will remain under human control. General Thacmore's crest flared bright red as he stood up abruptly. This is absurd. Does this primitive species think they can stand against the combined might of civilizations that mastered space travel before their planet developed multicellular life? We offer them a generous compromise and they respond with defiance. Sarah remained calm despite the tension building in the hall. General, we appreciate that our response may seem surprising to you. However, we have carefully considered all factors involved in this situation, and our decision stands. Krixtal leaned forward, his massive form radiating menace. Commander Chen, let me be perfectly clear. If humanity does not comply with this resolution voluntarily, we will be forced to implement it through other means. Your small patrol ships and planetary defense grids would not last an hour against a single Vorthan battlecruiser, let alone the combined forces we could bring to bear. For the first time since the debate began, Sarah smiled, an expression that seemed to disturb several of the alien delegates who had learned to read human facial expressions over the years. Ambassador, you are absolutely correct about one thing. This situation will indeed be resolved through other means. I suggest you contact your military commanders and advise them to approach our colonies with extreme caution. The hall fell silent at the implied threat. Several delegates looked shocked that a human would dare to make such a statement. Others seemed amused by what they perceived as desperate bravado from a cornered species. Marcus stood up beside Sarah, and for the first time in the entire debate, he spoke. Honored delegates, I am Dr. Marcus Webb, Chief Science Officer for Earth's Deep Space Development Program. For the past 10 years, I have been working on a project that has remained classified until this moment. Given the circumstances, I have been authorized to reveal certain information. The assembled aliens looked puzzled by this development. A few seemed intrigued by the mention of a secret human project, though most appeared skeptical that any human technology could be significant. Marcus activated a small device that projected a simple holographic image into the air above the human delegation. The image showed what appeared to be a basic technical schematic, nothing that would impress the advanced civilizations represented in the hall. This is the quantum resonance field generator, Marcus explained calmly. It allows for manipulation of space-time at the subatomic level, enabling near-instantaneous travel across galactic distances and rendering conventional sensors completely ineffective. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. Scientists and technical experts from a dozen different species leaned forward to study the hologram more closely. A few began speaking rapidly into their communication devices, clearly trying to contact their own research teams for analysis. Krixtal's golden eyes fixed on the hologram with intense interest. Dr. Webb, while we appreciate human imagination, I must point out that what you describe is theoretically impossible according to known physics. Space-time manipulation on that scale would require energy outputs greater than entire star systems. Marcus nodded as if he had expected that response. You are absolutely correct based on conventional understanding. However, human researchers discovered certain properties of quantum mechanics that had been overlooked by previous galactic civilizations. We found ways to tap into zero-point energy fields and create localized space-time distortions with minimal power requirements. General Thacmore's crest had shifted to the pale yellow that indicated confusion and uncertainty. Even if such technology existed, it would take centuries to develop practical applications. Your species has barely had spaceflight for 60 years. Sarah stepped forward again, her voice carrying a new note of confidence that made several delegates shift uncomfortably in their seats. General, that brings us to an important point that I think has been overlooked in today's discussion. For the past 30 years, while the galaxy has viewed humanity as a primitive, struggling species barely capable of interplanetary travel, we have been working on something that none of you suspected. The holographic display changed, now showing a star map of human space with new elements that had not been visible in the earlier presentations. Dotted lines connected various points in space, forming a complex network that spanned dozens of light years. We call it the Crimson Phoenix Initiative, Sarah continued. While our public ships continued to use conventional fusion drives, We have been secretly constructing a fleet of vessels equipped with quantum resonance technology. These ships have been positioned throughout human space for the past 5 years, completely invisible to your sensors and ready for immediate deployment. The hall erupted in chaos as the implications of Sarah's words sank in. Delegates shouted questions and accusations in dozens of different languages, while translation devices struggled to keep up with the cacophony. Military representatives frantically tried to contact their fleets and intelligence services to verify or disprove the human claims. Krikstal's voice cut through the noise like a blade. This is an elaborate deception. No species could develop such advanced technology in secret, especially not a primitive civilization like humanity. Sarah looked directly at the Vorthan ambassador with steady, confident eyes. Ambassador, in 36 hours, your battle fleets will reach the new Terra system to begin the forced evacuation you have planned. I suggest you instruct your commanders to scan very carefully for any unusual energy signatures when they arrive. What they find may surprise them. The presiding officer called for order, but the chaos in the hall continued. Species that had dismissed humanity minutes earlier were now frantically trying to reassess everything they thought they knew about human capabilities. Military commanders were demanding immediate intelligence reports, while scientists peppered Marcus with questions about the theoretical foundations of the technology he had described. Through it all, Sarah and Marcus remained calm, standing quietly in their corner of the hall while the galactic powers struggled to come to terms with the possibility that they had completely misunderstood humanity's true strength. As the session was finally called to adjournment, Sarah activated her personal communicator and spoke a single coded phrase. Phoenix Protocol is authorized. All units proceed to designated positions. The message traveled through quantum encrypted networks that none of the assembled aliens knew existed, reaching receivers throughout human space and beyond. In hidden bases and concealed shipyards, crews that had trained for this moment for years began final preparations for an operation that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The aliens had given humanity 30 days to surrender. They were about to discover that 30 hours would be more than enough time for the Phoenix to rise. When Phoenix rises, 36 hours later, the combined armada of the Vorthan Empire and Zephyrian Alliance dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the new Terra system. Admiral Vexrath, commanding from the bridge of the massive dreadnought Eternal Dominion, surveyed his force with satisfaction. 47 warships hung in perfect formation, their weapons powered and shields raised. Each vessel was a masterpiece of alien engineering, equipped with plasma cannons that could crack planets and shields that could withstand the fury of dying stars. Sensors show normal human activity on all 3 planets, reported his tactical officer. Their defensive platforms are active, but they pose no significant threat to our forces. Vexrath nodded, his scaled head reflecting the glow of the command displays. As a Vorthan admiral with over 2 centuries of military experience, he had commanded fleets in a dozen different wars. This mission felt more like a police action than a military operation. The humans would see the overwhelming force arrayed against them and surrender immediately. Signal the human colonies, he ordered. Inform them that they have 6 hours to begin evacuation procedures. Any ships that attempt to interfere with our operations will be destroyed. On the surface of New Terra, Governor Lisa Park received the alien transmission in her emergency command center, buried deep beneath the capital city of Haven. Lisa was a woman in her 50s who had spent the last 20 years building this colony. From nothing into a thriving world that was home to over 3 million people, she had always known this day might come, but the reality of it still sent chills down her spine. Governor, we're receiving priority communications from Admiral Rodriguez, reported her communications officer, a young man whose voice betrayed his nervousness despite his training. Lisa activated the secure channel and the familiar face of Admiral James Rodriguez appeared on her screen. James was known throughout the human fleet as Phoenix Rodriguez, a nickname he had earned during the early days of human space exploration, when he had somehow managed to bring his damaged ship back from what should have been a fatal mission. Now at 58, he was humanity's most experienced fleet commander and the architect of the Crimson Phoenix Initiative. Governor Park, this is Phoenix. Are your people ready? His voice was calm and steady, giving no indication of the magnitude of what was about to unfold. Lisa nodded, though her heart was racing. All civilian populations have been moved to the underground shelters as planned. Essential personnel are maintaining normal surface operations to keep up appearances. How long do we need to maintain the deception? Not long now, James replied. Our people have been in position for 12 hours. We're just waiting for the aliens to commit fully to their attack formation. Once they do, they won't be able to withdraw quickly enough to avoid what's coming. Light years away from New Terra, in the deep space between star systems where no sensors could detect them, the true Crimson Phoenix fleet waited in absolute silence. 63 ships hung motionless in the void, each one a marvel of human engineering that pushed the boundaries of known physics. Unlike the blocky industrial designs that characterized most alien vessels, these ships were sleek and organic-looking. Their hulls formed from materials that seemed to absorb light itself. Captain David Park, no relation to the governor but equally dedicated to humanity's cause, commanded the stealth ship Nightshade from his position at the center of the formation. David was a man in his early 40s who had spent his entire adult life preparing for this moment. He had been one of the first test pilots for the quantum resonance drive system, and he understood better than almost anyone what these ships were capable of. All ships report ready status, announced his operations officer, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim. Sarah had volunteered for the Phoenix project after her brother was killed in a pirate attack that the Galactic Council had refused to investigate because the victims were only human. David studied the tactical displays showing the positions of every ship in both the human fleet and the alien armada. The aliens had arranged themselves in a standard siege formation designed to bombard planetary defenses while protecting their larger ships from counterattack. It was a formation that had worked perfectly against dozens of species over thousands of years. It was also exactly what the humans had hoped they would choose. Dr. Patel, are the quantum field generators online? David asked, turning to the brilliant physicist who served as his science officer. Dr. Maya Patel looked up from her readings with barely contained excitement. Maya was one of the original developers of quantum resonance technology, and she had spent years refining the systems that would make today's operation possible. At 34, she was the youngest department head in the fleet, but her innovations had revolutionized everything humanity thought possible about space travel and warfare. All generators are operating at peak efficiency, Maya reported. We can initiate quantum fold on your command and be anywhere in the galaxy within minutes. The stealth field is holding perfectly. Their sensors can't detect us even if they're looking directly at our position. Back in the New Terra system, Admiral Vexrath was growing impatient with the humans' apparent lack of response to his ultimatum. Have the humans acknowledged our transmission? He demanded. Yes, Admiral, replied his communications officer. Governor Park has requested additional time to coordinate evacuation efforts. She claims they need at least 12 hours to safely transport their population. Vexrath's golden eyes flashed with annoyance. 12 hours? They're trying to stall for time, hoping their pathetic government will send reinforcements. Signal all ships to prepare for orbital bombardment. We'll demonstrate the futility of resistance by destroying one of their smaller cities. The alien fleet began moving into bombardment formation, their massive weapons swiveling toward the planet below. This was the moment that Admiral Rodriguez had been waiting for. Once the aliens committed to this aggressive posture, they would be locked into positions that limited their ability to maneuver or retreat quickly. James activated the quantum communicator that linked him to every ship in the Crimson Phoenix fleet. All units, this is Phoenix Command. The enemy has taken the bait. Execute Operation Sunrise. Let's show them what humanity has really been building. Throughout human space, 63 ships that had been invisible to all sensors suddenly blazed to life. Quantum resonance drives that had been operating in stealth mode shifted to full power, creating distortions in space-time that would be visible even to primitive sensors. The ships didn't move through space in any conventional sense. Instead, they folded space around themselves, instantly appearing in new locations as if they had always been there. The first indication Admiral Vexrath had that something was wrong came from his sensor officer, who suddenly looked up from his station with confusion and alarm. Admiral, I'm detecting massive energy spikes throughout the system. The readings don't match any known technology. Before Vexrath could respond, space around his fleet began to shimmer and distort. Reality seemed to bend and twist as quantum fields manipulated the very fabric of existence. Then, with no warning or gradual approach, human warships began materializing around the alien armada. They appeared not as distant contacts approaching from the edge of the system, but as fully formed vessels taking positions with surgical precision throughout the alien formation. Some materialized directly above and below the alien ships. Others appeared at perfect firing angles that bypassed shield configurations entirely. "Impossible," Vexrath shouted, his calm demeanor completely shattered. "No ship can move like that. Sensors, explain what I'm seeing." His tactical officer stared at readings that made no sense according to everything he had learned about physics and space combat. "Admiral, 63 vessels have just appeared around our formation. Their hulls are composed of materials that absorb our sensor beams, and their energy signatures indicate power systems at least 50% more advanced than our own." Admiral Rodriguez materialized his flagship, the Phoenix Rising, directly in front of the alien dreadnought at a distance that would normally be considered suicidal in space combat. At this range, the two ships could have destroyed each other instantly, but James was counting on the aliens being too shocked to react immediately. He opened a communication channel to the entire alien fleet, his voice broadcasting to every enemy ship simultaneously. "This is Admiral James Rodriguez of the Earth Defense Force. You are completely surrounded by the Crimson Phoenix fleet. Power down your weapons and prepare to receive our terms." Vexrath stared at the human ship that had appeared from nowhere, its sleek hull gleaming with an inner light that seemed to come from the quantum fields surrounding it. "This is impossible. Your species doesn't have this technology. Our intelligence." Reports indicated that human ships still use primitive fusion drives. James smiled grimly. "Admiral, your intelligence reports were accurate about our public fleet. However, you never suspected that we might have a private one. For 30 years, while your governments dismissed us as harmless primitives, we've been preparing for exactly this situation." General Thakmor's voice crackled over the communication channel from his position aboard the Zephyrian battlecruiser War's End. His feather crest was flashing through the entire spectrum of colors, indicating emotional states that had no names in human language. "This is some kind of trick. Humans cannot simply appear from nowhere." Dr. Maya Patel's voice joined the communication from her position aboard the Nightshade. "General, what you're witnessing is the practical application of quantum field manipulation. We've learned to fold spacetime itself, allowing our ships to exist in multiple locations simultaneously until we choose to collapse the probability wave at a specific point." The explanation meant nothing to most of the alien commanders, but their science officers understood enough to realize that humanity had developed technology that was decades or centuries ahead of anything the galaxy had previously seen. Vexrath tried to regain control of the situation. "Even if your ships are more advanced than we expected, you're still outnumbered. 47 ships against 63 isn't impossible odds." Admiral Rodriguez's response was calm and measured. "Admiral, you're thinking about this situation in conventional terms. Let me demonstrate why that's a mistake." James gave a subtle hand signal to his weapons officer, who activated a targeting system that had never been tested in actual combat. The Phoenix Rising's main weapon wasn't a plasma cannon or particle beam like the aliens used. Instead, it projected a concentrated quantum field that could manipulate matter at the subatomic level. A narrow beam of invisible energy reached out from the human flagship and touched the shields of the alien dreadnought. Instead of the explosive impact that characterized normal space combat, something far more disturbing happened. The alien shields simply stopped existing. The energy fields that had protected the massive ship for decades collapsed as their fundamental particles were rearranged at the quantum level. "Your shields are now offline," James announced calmly. "I could target your engines, weapons, or life support systems just as easily. However, I prefer to demonstrate restraint rather than destruction." Throughout the alien fleet, similar demonstrations were taking place. Human ships were systematically disabling alien vessels without destroying them, using technology that made conventional defenses completely useless. Shields collapsed, weapons powered down, and engines went offline as quantum fields rearranged the basic structure of alien technology. Within minutes, the entire invasion fleet was helpless. Their ships remained intact and their crews were unharmed, but they were completely at the mercy of the human vessels surrounding them. Vexrath sat in stunned silence as his officers reported the systematic shutdown of every major system on his flagship. "How is this possible?" he whispered, more to himself than to anyone else. Admiral Rodriguez heard the question through the open communication channel. "Admiral, 30 years ago, a human exploration team discovered the ruins of an ancient civilization on a world at the edge of our space. Among those ruins, we found technological artifacts that changed our understanding of physics itself. We've spent 3 decades learning to apply that knowledge." James paused, letting the implications sink in before continuing. "We could have revealed this technology years ago and demanded equal treatment in galactic affairs. Instead, we chose to remain patient and secretive. We wanted to be certain that when we finally demonstrated our true capabilities, the lesson would be clear and permanent." Governor Lisa Park's voice joined the communication from the planet below. "All alien forces, this is New Terra Control. You came here to forcibly relocate 3 million human colonists because you believed we were too weak to resist. I want you to understand something important. We could have destroyed your entire fleet before you even knew we were here. Instead, we chose to disable your ships and preserve your lives." The profound implications of the governor's words settled over the alien commanders like a cold fog. They had come here expecting to brush aside weak human defenses and relocate a helpless population. Instead, they had discovered that humanity possessed military technology that could have eliminated them effortlessly, but had chosen mercy over destruction. Admiral Rodriguez continued the lesson. "The human colonies in this system and throughout our space will remain under human control. However, we're not interested in conquest or domination. We want the same thing we've always wanted: the right to exist and grow in peace." General Thakmore's voice was subdued as he responded. "Admiral Rodriguez, the Galactic Council will never accept this development. The major powers won't allow a primitive species to possess technology that surpasses their own." James's response carried a note of sadness that surprised the alien commanders. "General, we're not a primitive species and we never were. We're patient, we're careful, and we're far more dangerous when threatened than anyone imagined. The choice now facing the galaxy is simple: accept humanity as an equal partner in galactic civilization, or discover just how extensive our preparations have been." Dr. Maya Patel activated her sensors and began broadcasting detailed scans of the surrounding space. "Gentlemen, what you see here is only a small demonstration of human capabilities. There are currently 347 Crimson Phoenix vessels positioned throughout the galaxy, all invisible to your sensors until we choose to reveal them. Every major star system, trade route, and military installation in known space is currently under human observation." The alien commanders absorbed this information in stunned silence. The species they had dismissed as primitive newcomers had somehow managed to position a fleet throughout galactic space without anyone detecting them. The implications for intelligence gathering, military positioning, and strategic advantage were staggering. Admiral Vexrath finally found his voice. "What do you want from us?" Admiral Rodriguez's answer was simple and direct. "Recognition, respect, and a guarantee that human colonies will never again be threatened with forced relocation. In return, we're prepared to share some of our technological advances with species that demonstrate they can be trusted as genuine partners." The communication channel fell silent as the alien commanders contemplated a galaxy that had suddenly become far more complex than they had ever imagined. The species they had planned to relocate like primitive nomads had revealed themselves to be the most technologically advanced civilization in known space. Governor Park's voice filled the silence. "Admiral Vexrath, you and your fleet are free to return to your home territories. We're transmitting detailed technical specifications for a new type of quantum communicator to your science officers. When your governments are ready to discuss a new relationship with humanity based on mutual respect and cooperation, use those communicators to contact us." As the alien fleet began powering up their engines for the long journey home, Admiral Rodriguez opened a private channel to his fleet commanders. All ships maintain positions until the alien forces have cleared the system. Then execute Phase 2 of the Phoenix Protocol. It's time for the galaxy to see what humanity has really been building. Throughout human space, hidden shipyards and construction facilities that had operated in secret for decades began revealing themselves. The galaxy was about to discover that the Crimson Phoenix fleet was not humanity's greatest secret. It was just the beginning. The species that had been dismissed as primitive and helpless was about to take their place as the newest and perhaps most formidable major power in galactic civilization. The Phoenix had risen, and the galaxy would never be the same.